Okay, so where did I leave off as far as the resume goes? I think I had just left Southern California, realized that I was living at my dad's house and not just vacationing there, and realized that I needed to get a job so that I could, keep buying my drugs. That's what it came down to because, room and board were free. Dad was putting us up, feeding us. And so I wound up working. And again, this only really helps if you know Oakland, or if you know Oakland in the mid 1980s. I ended up working at a gas station on 14th Street, which was during the daytime not the worst place to be, but at night as a white youth was certainly not at all safe to be. Gladly they they knew it wasn't a great area, and they always shut the station down about dark. So that was nice. Um, but that was and this was well before the age of really even credit cards. I mean, yeah, there were credit cards, but nobody used them for gas. Especially not, this was an independent station. It wasn't like a Shell or something where you'd have a Shell card. I don't remember the name of the company. It was a cash business, and the way it worked back then was you walked up to the guy, me being the guy, and you gave him no, that's right. You pumped your gas first, and then you paid afterwards. Uh, so for all the people who put 1001 in their tank and only gave you a $10 bill, you were now a penny short, and you had to count and balance your drawer every night. So I'd always hit them up for the penny. Tell them, if you went to the grocery and spent 1001, would you give the cashier their $10, or would you find a penny too? It wasn't a bad job. I got ripped off more than once. Um, Sometimes just scammed. One time actually held up. The scam is when you run across somebody who's quick with their hands, and they put 10 in the tank and give you a 20, and you walk back into your room and make change and bring it back out for them because you're an idiot or a good kid or something, or she was just too fat to get out of the car, if I remember correctly. And then as you turn around, she says, "Wait a minute, you only gave me a 1." And you look, and she's holding up a $1 bill. And so I came up $9 short that night. And the shortages all had to come out of your paycheck. That's just the way they did it. So, I worked 3 hours for free that day. At one point, I remember. So the way the drawer worked, it was a live drawer, and there there were no computers back then. The best computer on the market. I mean, yeah, IBM had computers, NASA had computers, a bunch of places had computers, but Fill Up Your Gas Tank Incorporated, or whatever the name of the place I worked at, didn't have computers. Uh, so the way the drawer worked was you were covered up to $150. If somebody stole $151 from you, you were responsible for $1. If they stole 200, you were responsible for 50. Right? You were covered up to $150. And I'd been busy. It was a Saturday. I'd been busy, and I hadn't made a drop in the floor safe in a while. And so I counted out my drawer, and I was at 330 something. And so I, made it, and you had to drop in increments of $100. So I made 2 drops, and I'm fixing to get them in the floor safe. Well, the floor safe is under the desk. So I'm on my hands and knees, ass sticking out, head under the desk, and I hear somebody come in. I pull my head out from underneath the desk, and I'm on my hands and knees. I am not at all in a defendable position. And this gentleman, who had a look that I recognized in his eyes, and that look was, I'm going to need to get high very soon, lowered a Craftsman screwdriver to my head. It was a standard screwdriver. It was probably 14 inches, not including the handle. And he says, "Give me the money." And he looks at the cash drawer. And, I think he's fucking around with me. I said, "Are you kidding?" And he touches it just lightly, the screwdriver, just lightly to my temple. And he says, "You think I'm kidding?" And I reached up onto the desk and grabbed the keys, which were sitting right there, popped open the drawer and said, "Hey, did you want the change too?" Because I knew I was under 150, and I knew that no matter what I had in there, it wasn't worth him breaking my skin. So he took that. He said, "Go into the back room and count to 30. Fuck you, dude. I counted to 45. And then got up, locked the door, called the cops. They took a report based on the 911 operator and the officers that showed up. They were fairly sure by how shaky my voice was that I'd got robbed. I knew I had just made a couple drops, and I knew that I was freaked out. I don't think I've ever admitted this before. So I pocketed $30 so I could go buy a bag. Because I was going to need to calm down that night. And did. Buy a bag and calm down that night. It turns out that the guy took, and I'm using my finger quotes, the guy took $148, and I was still $2 under the minimum of what could be stolen without it coming out of my pocket. That was scary. That was the first time I had a weapon drawn on me in a place where I was completely in a non-defensible position. Now, there was nothing I could do. So eventually they transferred me up closer to my dad's house, again, in the Montclair area. For those of you who know Oakland, the gas station I worked at was literally right on the other side of the freeway from the Mormon Tabernacle. And it was very different clientele. These were all people from the hills, or mostly all people from the hills. The rich hills, I should say. And it was still the same thing. You still had to tell them to give you the extra penny or two, but they would. They might glower at you a little bit, but they would. I had that job for a while. Manual gas pumps where you had to reset them every time, where you had to read the pumps because there were two different scales on the pumps. I mean, nobody has old pumps like this anymore, but if you ever run across one like, at the Smithsonian or something, you'll see there are, there's obviously the gallons pumped and price dials, but there are two smaller dials. Dials, not the right word. That read, which also told you how many gallons were pumped total, not just in that purchase. And so, you had to track those, and then you had to do some balancing. You had to figure out, and you had to make sure your drawer matched your income matched your drawer. And mine mostly did. I mean, there were a couple times, and I was off by $2 or $3 here or there. It wasn't horrible. It was an easy enough job. Met a girl that I really liked when we started hanging out. She would come visit me, and that was very cool because that helped with my day. Uh, saw my I'm gonna have to edit out so many uhs. Saw my first really horrible traffic accident there. Again, this was at the base of a hill or midway down a hill, I guess. And there was a beer delivery truck, with the not the big full on big rig size, but the one with the roll up doors on the side, right? And it had been coming down the hill, and apparently it lost its brakes coming down the hill, and somehow it made the turn onto the road I was on, and if it had just been able to, it was, a turn. It was 90 degrees, right? And the problem was that he took it at probably 110 degrees. So he crashed through a bunch of stuff and ended up tipping onto the on ramp. The I saw him hit a few things, including cars and a person, before he tipped off onto the on ramp. That was unsettling, I think is the word I'm going to use. I started going gray after that. I was 21, 22 maybe. Not that old. Certainly too young to start going gray. Yeah, that was tough to see because it was just a little. It was a first grader waiting at the bus stop and didn't quite get out of the way in time. Came through. Yeah, the big truck hit a car. The car hit a car parked in, filling up, getting gas. In my gas station, I ran over to the pump shut off and shut off the pumps, just like I knew what I was doing or something, because that's what made sense to me. And I think the thing that really gets me the most is, here's this, slat-sided beer truck, and it's making deliveries, and it's just this afternoon, so it's still got a truck full of beer, and within 10 minutes, the neighborhood has emptied out, and there's a bunch of people walking around picking up beer bottles, so they can take them home and drink them later, I guess. And there's this little 6-year-old kid with his brains splattered across my gas station. And it really kind of irritated me. I should be paying $125 an hour for this. Y'all have no idea how many blank spots I've edited out already from just me breathing and stuff. Anyway, it wasn't long after that I quit that job, just because it was tough for me to be there anymore, and I started working with my brother, and we worked at LRD Enterprises or something like that. We worked for Laggy Ray, and we were canvassers. And here's another job that I don't think exists anymore. But basically, what we do is we'd walk around neighborhoods and try to get basic information from homeowners, because we couldn't talk to renters, because the next person who called him from the company was going to be a sales rep, and they were going to talk him into spending, $20,000 or $30,000, which a renter's not going to do, but a homeowner might. At first, we were selling solar, And I don't mean the solar that we have today, physioelectric. The solar that they had back then was, we run the water up through some pipes on your roof. The pipes in the background are all painted black. They absorb the heat. We then take that warmer water and dump it into your hot water tank, your water heater. If you call it a hot water heater, I will at the very least flinch, if not fully correct you. We'll take the warmer water from the solar heater on your tank, from the solar water heater on your tank, and then drop it into your water heater, and then you'll pay less heating up your water because it's already going to come in. It's going to come in at 90 instead of at 40, right? Degrees. And gosh, I did that. We did that for a while, and then we also started selling water purification systems, which was tough because the area that I worked in had some of the best water in the state, Hetch Hetchy water, and it was really, really tough to sell water purifiers to people who already had excellent water. That wasn't my job, though. My job was to just say, well, are you the homeowner? What's your last name? How many people live here? There was a list of like half a dozen questions, but the only ones that really mattered were, what's your name and what's your phone number and how many people live here? And, somebody is going to call you back to set an appointment. You do understand that. And it wasn't a horrible job, except for canvassing was a really big deal. There were some neighborhoods we'd go to where we'd run into other canvassing crews for other companies. I mean, canvassing back then was the way robocalls are today. You got it at least once a week. And so some of the people were not excited to see me. I think that's the nice way of saying it. And I did that job for quite a while. The big bonus on that job was every night on the drive home, and it was about a half an hour to get home. So here's how it worked. Tim had a van, big old van, full of seats. It fit 7 or 9 or 92 or something like that. A lot of people. And I think this was before seatbelts were a have to. I'm sure this was when you could still, because, when I was a kid, you could ride in the back of a truck legally. Maybe not on the freeway. But I did that a couple times too, even as an adult. Quick side story. For a while, the wife and I only had one vehicle, and it was a full-size truck. So whenever the 4 of us, she and I and the 2 boys, would go someplace, obviously they all would get the cabin, but there wasn't enough room for 2 car seats and the mom and me in the cabin. So I would have to lay down in the bed and just hope she didn't crash, or have to stop really hard, and just lay there and hope she didn't get pulled over. So the officer saw me, laying down in the bed of the truck. I'd bring a pillow. And I'd just lay there and, I think the longest trip we took like that was about 45 minutes. It was miserable, and then 45 minutes back, and it was cold and miserable, but it was, I think, a day at the fair, and we had a good time, so it was worth it. Anyway, so, canvassing. Sorry, sidetracked. Tim had a big old van, and we had 8 or 9 people on the crew, and y'all don't know what a Thomas Brothers guide is either, I'm sure. But we'd pull up the Thomas Brothers guide for the area and photocopy off a couple pages, and he would set us our areas, our walking areas. It was generally a couple miles of houses, right? And we were expected to hit every one of them. And then we'd all climb back into the van at the end, and we'd all compare how many good solid contacts we got, and a really good number. A passable number was 30. A really good number was 60, and that was probably 4 or 5 hours worth of work. Um, and then we'd turn in our good tickets, and then the appointment setters would call them, and then the salesman would go out, and the company was making money. I know the company was making money because the owner owned a Jaguar car. It had one little dent in the passenger side rear quarter panel. Now, I mean, smaller. I mean, it looked like somebody dented it with the eraser of a pencil. It was that small. And I remember asking Laggy one time, "What's that dent from?" And he said, "That's from the only time I've ever let my wife drive this car, and the only time she ever will." He says, "I keep it there to remind her when she asks if she can drive the Jag." Kind of a dick, but I get it too. The best part about that job was it was like I said, half an hour or so away from where we live, from Dad's, and we would always have a joint for the ride home, which always made the ride home, you know, pass almost timelessly, which was nice. Uh, it was a decent job, and then they changed their marketing strategy and no longer needed canvassers. And I tried to become an appointment setter for a while, and I really just sucked at that, um, really badly. And by this point, my brother and I had moved out on our own. So rent and food were now also something I had to take into consideration. I wasn't just living off dad and stepmom anymore. Um, so I had to go get a job, and I got a job as a waiter. I don't like people, and I got a job as a waiter. I think what I'll do is stop at this point and tell some of the stories from the square at another time. Hope you're enjoying the audio resume. Thanks for listening to me ramble. Stay blessed.